event delivered and sponsored by CIRCL. CIRCL is today represented by Timothée Rebours, who has invited a panel of experts, Alexandre Dulaunoy, head of the CISO for private sector and the municipalities of Luxembourg, but also Gregory, who is CISO at Eurofins, Food and Environment Testing Europe. So just to explain the context of today's event, we are today here with Encryption Europe. Encryption Europe is an alliance of SMEs, and we try to push forward values, but also key aspects of the encryption topic, which apply directly for the SMEs. Today we have over 10 members, and we are still growing, and thanks to their expertise, we are able to address various topics, such as the one that we'll discuss today. So I don't want to take your attention for too long, and now I give the floor to Timothée. Timothée, please.
Hi, thank you, Gregory. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning for this roundtable around the interception of communications by legal means and the inextricable issues of backdoors and encryption it poses. Before diving into what the backdoor is, I'd like to explain a bit what encryption is. Encryption is basic function is to take a piece of data, let's say a message, a document, a phone call, a communication with a website, and it protects it with a lock, a numerical, digital lock that produces a piece of encrypted data. And this piece of encrypted data can be safely sent across the internet, and no one can read it except the holder of the key that encrypted the piece of data. This is a gross simplification of what encryption is. You use encryption every day, even when watching this roundtable. There is HTTPS enabled in your web browser to watch me speak and the panelists. It's ingrained in every aspect of our digital lives. Now, how could we break encryption to enable a legal interception of such communication? The first idea is to transpose it to the physical world and say, let's break the lock. In the physical world, a lock, a padlock, is here to protect a piece of data in a safe or to protect your home from being burgled. And its basic function is not to prevent anyone from getting into the safe, it's to slow down the attack. I mean by that you can take a crowbar, or you can take a hammer, or any equipment to break the lock. In the digital world, encryption is virtually impossible to break. It's unbreakable, and that's here the main difference between a lock and encryption. You can't break encryption easily. Only the holder of the key, whether it's a bad guy or a good guy, can read the piece of data. So if we wanted to give access to the authorities, the only way, without weakening the encryption, is to give the key of the lock to someone else. If you want to enable someone to read a piece of data, you need to give the key to this person in advance. And that's basically the only way. That would mean, for example, this is the same thing as TSA. When in the United States, when you get there, they have a special key to open the luggage you bring with you. And this special key opens all the locks on luggages. And this is kind of master key. It's not very secure, as any TSA agent has the key, and basically anyone can make the key. Everyone knows how to make this key, but that's not really important. When you transpose this kind of scenario to the digital world, this would mean that nearly anyone on the internet would have the key to decrypt any communication. And that is what we call backdoor. This is a gross simplification, once again, but this gives you an idea of why experts, and we'll discuss this afterwards, are saying that a backdoor is a bad idea. So a backdoor would mean that you give the French justice, the French police department, the Belgian justice department, and the American justice department, each one would have their own key to break the encryption of the communications they want to intercept. And that's basically what a backdoor would be. The main problem is, how can we make the internet a safer place? Internet can't be a lawless zone. We acknowledge that there are criminals on the internet, and that encryption is a mean used by criminals to protect their own communications. And we have read in the news that terrorists use Telegram, that pedophiles use EncroChat, and that many other criminals use encryption to protect their communications and their criminal behavior. And we would want to catch them, and that's a goal we can all agree on. The tricky part is that if we were to introduce a backdoor in every commercial application that uses encryption, criminals would move to alternatives that are open sourced and that exist today, such as PGP or Tor, which are respectively an encryption solution that enables you to encrypt documents and messages, and Tor that can allow you to browse the internet anonymously. Those tools are used by journalists, by everyone that needs a bit of privacy on the internet, and also by criminals. If we can't restrict the use of robust encryption in this, because if it were made, if it were deemed illegal, people would just keep on using them. And it would be impossible to control the use of widely available open source software, and we will discuss this in the roundtable. We, rather than trying to forbid encryption, the use of robust encryption by introducing backdoors, we can take a look at what is currently done by the police departments around the world. And we can focus on what happened a few months ago with EncroChat, which was encrypted communication, an encryption messaging application that was used by criminals and that was taken down by a coalition of police forces in Europe. And they didn't ask EncroChat for any kind of help. They hacked them. And they hacked them legally. There was a judge that authorized the action against EncroChat and the users of EncroChat, so that the judge and the police departments could read what the criminals were saying on EncroChat. And this is radically different than a backdoor, because they didn't ask or force EncroChat to do anything. They just hacked them, like a criminal would do. But this poses other problems, like how long should, when the police department should be allowed to do that. That's very invasive. If there were criminals that used WhatsApp, should we allow the police departments to hack WhatsApp, and 99% of the users that use WhatsApp aren't criminals and shouldn't be hacked? Is this a good idea. And there is also the question of the zero-day management. And a zero-day is a vulnerability that is used to hack a piece of software. Should the police department disclose the vulnerabilities they used to hack a piece of software to the editor or not? What problems could it pose? Should we allow the software editors or the service providers should we force the software editors or the service providers to help the police departments by altering their piece of software or service during the investigation? This is a really tricky issue, and we could talk about the San Bernardino iPhone that resurfaced in the news some weeks ago. Well, and to discuss this, this is not really a technical issue. We all use software in our lives, especially since the COVID. We all have a digital life, and this is not a question of, this is not a technicality. This is whether or not the police, how the police does its own digital transformation, and the police is not a technical issue. It's the body of the government and the governments in the world, and how do we want them to transform for the digital world? To tackle these questions, we have a roundtable. Unfortunately, we have Eric MacDonald that is unavailable for this roundtable. I'll let you maybe introduce the other panelists, Gregory.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this presentation and introduction to the encryption topic. Even if I can imagine that most of us, and I can see in the chat that a lot of people are already, some people are already discussing this point, so don't worry, we will ask these questions to the participants. And just to give some context, I would like to ask a question, because during the preparation, Alexandre told us that this discussion around encryption is maybe as long as internet itself, to know if it's a matter of civil right, if it's a matter of law enforcement, and on top of that, maybe a kind of political understanding or misunderstanding of the question. So please.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's indeed one of the main questions from the early days of internet. And if we come back in the 90s, we could remember a small story about the NSA asking the US government to create a kind of backdoor using the Clipper chip and an encryption algorithm called skipjack. And this came just when, at the same time, people started to use SSL. SSL was really at the beginning of the protocol definition and so on, and starting to be used on the internet. So it was really for them a challenge, because that means the transport protocol on internet will become encrypted, and it will be more challenging for them for doing interception. But nowadays, if you look in today's world, I mean, sending out our credit card numbers, doing bank transaction and so on, you use TLS, it makes sense and so on. And there's always this fight when at some point in time you add to citizens and the economical sector access to encryption, there is a fight that it might limit, for example, investigation and so on. And at the end, it makes a lot of sense to basically have technical measures to protect communications and so on, such as encryption, and willing to introduce backdoors to reduce this kind of security capabilities that we basically are offered by technologies or mathematics and so on, is basically limited then. So it makes clearly no sense. But this fight is like for years. I mean, the past 30 years we had this kind of fight, and it's coming back. Just an addition of that, it's in addition to the backdooring things, and for the past 30 years, many organizations, many government and so on try to introduce what they call lawful interceptions, or so in real world backdoors, and every time it was basically failing and creating new vulnerabilities, increasing the attack surface on software and equipment. So you see this history is coming back. The thing that is important, and someone was asking about, is police or law enforcement performing cyber attacks and so on. Yes, because it's one of the technical measures that you can use to basically conduct your investigations. And there are still other things. So the capability of using backdooring and so on make no sense when you have already a lot of other investigation mechanisms available, but those need to be at some point used and accepted by the community and the legal framework.
Thanks a lot, and I think we'll have time to discuss all these points a little bit more in details. You were talking about the economical use and also how the internet developed from a place where to exchange information to today a real marketplace, which is a kind of a challenge for banks. So I would like to have your feedback, Gregory, as a former CISO for a large bank, and to tell us a little bit more about your perspective on both encryption itself, but especially on the backdoors, please.
Yes, thank you. So there are already lots of things to discuss, thanks to Alexandre and Timothée. As a citizen, I think we all have we might have all have some concerns, and we might be against or for backdoors. But as a CISO and or professional security, security professional that we are there, myself, I'm quite mixed. I have mixed feelings. Alexandre was saying that weakening cryptography is an issue because we will have to deal with that, and in the future we will have to deal with that. That's clear. He was mentioning the NSA approach on cryptography. This is still an issue today. So when we are looking at a website, it's quite often that we see websites with the free vulnerabilities that were coming from the export approach of cryptography. And so, and this one, it was at least known. We knew that we were using export cryptography algorithm, which might be less secure. Sometimes it's even more subtle, like what they did with elliptic curves cryptography, where they didn't even disclose. They were using a backdoor that they knew was there, but nobody else, basically nobody else knew about it. And the problem with that is that cryptography is evolving fast. Today we are moving to TLS 1.3, but a lot of the internet was still using TLS 1.0, and it's only disappearing now because Chrome, Firefox, and Internet Explorer stopped supporting these protocols. But else, we could have them for 10 years, and a lot of assets are exposed on the internet are there for like 10 to 20 years, sometimes even more. In the banking industry, I think I will surprise nobody if I say that some systems are AES 400 or old mainframes that can, and some of the legacy code are more than 40 or 50 years old. So that's the truth. We have to deal with it. And these things that we are doing now have consequences in a very long term.
Thanks a lot, and also for this long-term perspective, because that's our legacy, I would say. And Timothée, how do you see, or do you wrap up this technical debate? Because we definitely have the feeling that for most of the experts, the question is already resolved, and we should move forward. But it's still discussed again and again. So is that true that more or less all the experts have the same standpoint?
Yeah, I've on the opinion of the experts, I've rarely met a security expert that says that a backdoor is okay. I have, but that's very rare. I think the difference between a security expert and a regular citizen or member of the police forces in any agency in the world is that a security expert is by design very he expects things to break, and a regular citizen doesn't see, if there is a 1% chance or 0.1% chance that it breaks, for a regular citizen, this is okay. For a security expert, if you make something that is 0.1%, and that has a 0.1% chance of failing, and that it's used 1 billion times, you know that it's a really, really big issue. The main difference between a security expert and someone else is this perspective. And the other thing is that in the police forces, they were used to being able to break into a safe or into a home to do a subpoena. And now they arrest someone, they take their phone, and they can't open it. And they can't read the messages this person sent, where 10 years ago they were able to. And this changes the way the police forces work. And we have to acknowledge that they have to invent new tools to work. And the basic reflex that anyone has is to do it the old way. And if you give an encrypted iPhone to someone, to a member of the police forces, his old habit is to open it and read the messages. And if he cannot, he will ask, why can't I? And this is because it's encrypted. It's the easy target. But the real question is not how do we open this iPhone, is how does the justice and the police departments around the world do their digital transformation, and how do we put a framework on this? Because this is not the same techniques. These are not the same techniques. These are on this, and the techniques do not have the same consequences. When you get into the home of a suspected criminal and you take all the documents, this is very localized. You only attack the privacy, you only breach the privacy of this person because he is a suspect. When you hack into a whole messaging application, you have side effects when performing the cyber attack. You have all the non-suspected users of the app that are how do we say, when casualties of unwanted casualties of the attack. And this is not something we are used to when investigating. And I think we must, as a society, as a community, enforce a framework to the police department, to police forces around the world, that prevent them from doing something we would regret.
Thanks, and it leads me to ask a question back to you, Alexandre. So how justice and law enforcement agency could work in this case? Is there a new way? And just to, let's say, split up your answer, then I would like also to have a more focused approach of the second chapter, let's say, of the Anchor chat, which is more on the judicial and the feedback from the lawyers saying that it might be unlawful. So first thing first, or is that possible for justice and the law enforcement agency to work?
Yeah, so sometimes we have this kind of black or white discussion that law enforcement is, for example, in favor of backdoors. And I've seen a lot of discussion with law enforcement agencies and so on. It's not the case with a lot of them. They understood the risk of having backdoors, and they even understand that it's maybe for them a risk, because if you have lawful interception backdoors, you might have the same for their equipment that they are using for investigation and so on. And if it's vulnerable, they might leave their investigation or the outgoing investigation. So that means for lawful, at least for lawful interceptions and what we call about police and so on, I think we have to separate two things: the investigation itself and the technique that they are using. And you were mentioning the Encryption case. Some information leaked in the press and in the public about it and what they did. And you see that they were using basically different techniques to directly target their suspects and so on, which were by using exploitations. And that's the thing that I think right now that we might have a debate about. I think maybe it's fine to have, like, for example, lawful interception doing exploitations on terrorist activities and so on, and focusing on that, and not to weakening all the encryption mechanism from various legitimate use. And that's, I think, giving the rights for law enforcement agencies and so on to conduct investigations by using some exploitation technique. And that, I think, makes sense because then it's really focused, it's in a scope of a legal framework and so on. And usually when you see the debate about the technique of investigation and so on, maybe there an additional ethical and legal debate on maybe giving the capabilities to the law enforcement agencies regarding what they do, and especially to maybe use techniques that are already used, because it's not a secret that some of law enforcement agencies are using exploitations, and it's the same for some intelligence organization and so on, so that there's even a market for that and so on, so you can debate and on this aspect, but that's really focusing on a specific one. And so I would say that there's some, between brackets, the kind of opportunities to at least have the proper techniques and the valid techniques that law enforcement can use on a day-to-day basis without putting at stake the complete technologies regarding encryption and so on.
In this case, we are addressing the digital transformation of the law enforcement agencies and also the justice, if I'm right. The ability to understand the new tooling and also the new way how criminal works.
Yeah, so the thing is, there's this problem that criminals are going further and further for the techniques, and then you need to get still one step before to be able to catch them. That's a classical problem. But it's not by weakening the rest that you will solve that problem. And the only thing is to allow police and so on to do their job and to perform maybe sometimes exploitation and so on at the same time. So as I said here, for us, it makes a lot of sense that police and so on are acting and doing their duties to catch criminals, which makes, I think, a lot of sense. But the tool set that they have is much broader than just those kind of legitimate lawful access, because someone was mentioning in the chat legitimate lawful access, and I think this one is a kind of oxymoron because it's like you cannot really get legitimate lawful access, and there's some very, very good case about that. And if you are searching on the internet for a case about mobile equipment, and there's even a case in Greece where it was abused by third parties and so on. When you give a kind of backdoor keys, and I think Timothée was mentioning it, the TSA case is really a very good one. I mean, everyone can copy the keys. They can open any of the bags of everyone. So those master keys are usually a problem, and there is no way around that. It's part of the system. If you weaken something, someone will exploit it. Whatever you do, it's like that. So, I mean, police has a set of tools to do that, to do their activities. This one, I think, is a focus by some agencies, but is not really the thing that I would say is not a kind of global model, because I think for some it's even putting at stake their investigation and so on if they are weakening encryption.
Okay, so let's say that first thing first is to understand what encryption is, and now to understand how the backdoors might weaken and like enlarge the surface of attack or vulnerabilities. And now that's let's say make me think about a point like what is the ethical debate on giving the law enforcement agency, but also justice, this tooling to bypass the backdoors. So as you mentioned, Gregory, as a citizen, you also have a feedback, a point, even if it's not the easiest question.
Yeah. No, well, if I can get back 1 second on what Alexandre was just saying, I think it's important to understand that, obviously most of the attendees know that, but confidentiality, we are discussing mostly confidentiality. Yeah? How do we protect our secrets? And that's perfectly fine. But we have to understand also that cryptography is used for other use, and especially integrity and non-repudiation, meaning if I send a message and I sign it with my cryptographic key, it means that I'm the author, and what the guy receive is what I sent. So we are establishing trust, and this part of trust is very important. And if we start breaking cryptography, because as Timothée was saying before, there are many ways to introduce backdoors. It can be software backdoors, but it can be also backdoors in cryptography. That means that we can have this certitude regarding the integrity of the message. What it means is that just to give a very short example on for the finance industry. In the finance industry, we are starting to see applications that are allowing you to trade a lot of things. Well, it's not exactly new, but this is something that has come during the last 10 years. We are seeing also all this fuss about bitcoins and applications that and bitcoins is mostly, well, cryptography. If we are breaking cryptography on this, that means that, well, tomorrow when I receive an order, when a bank receives an order saying sell 10,000 of actions of stocks for this company, maybe the issuer didn't want to send 10,000, maybe want to send 20,000 or maybe 1,000, and it can change, or maybe they mixed the numbers. So lots of things can happen, and well, it's a major danger for the financial system, but well, for everything. So we need to be able to maintain this integrity thing. And too often, if there is a gag order coming at the same time, it can be an issue. So that's where, as a citizen, I also start to have an issue with backdoors.
Thanks a lot. And you bring this idea of web of trust. I don't exactly remember where I heard that, but that's a key point, because if tomorrow we start having doubt, and it's also the case with disinformation, because we know that on the main platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and so on, we have seen a lot of disinformation, or what was called as disinformation. And if someone who is using an encrypted service, which might be trustful, it could have this message change, for sure. It's totally changing the whole perspective of that. So, Timothée, can you just push a little bit further this idea of what is the interest of encryption in trust, and what would be for, I'm thinking about a lot of different type of entities, but what could be the main issue for example, your clients, if tomorrow the encrypted messages is not encrypted anymore, or could be changed?
Yeah, the main features we want to have in encryption is confidentiality and integrity and authentication in some sense. Basically, you want to ensure that only a specific group of persons is able to read a piece of data, and you want to ensure that it's really the persons you think are sending the piece of data that really sent them. And this is the trust we talk about on the internet, is to ensure and if you can't ensure confidentiality and integrity on data, basically examples in the world, it would be, for example, health data being read or corrupted by attackers, and if medical data was read by, I don't know, insurance companies, if the medical files of all the French citizens, for example, were available to anyone on the internet to be read, this would have impact on insurance policies to these persons, even though it would be really hard to prove it. This could have impacts on discrimination at work. This could have, this is a gross violation of privacy. You don't want everyone in the world to know that you have this type of disease, or I don't know. This is why medical secrecy is of the utmost importance. And the other aspect is integrity. Integrity is to ensure that a piece of data hasn't been corrupted and that it comes from the person or the entity that you thought it came from. This integrity, let's say, it doesn't exist anymore because encryption is weakened in some way. This would mean that you can't ensure that the amount you have in your bank account isn't corrupted. Let's say someone forgets 0. Or you can't ensure that a diploma from a school is valid. You can't ensure the validity of a transaction. Gregory gave this example. You don't know if someone's saying you, let's wire transfer €1 million to this company, you don't know if it's true or not. And these integrity issues, even though encryption isn't weakened, that there isn't any backdoor that are introduced at the moment, we see already phishing attacks that do exactly the same trick by tricking someone into thinking data has integrity and that it is authenticated, and really it's not. So to our clients, those they come to us for ensuring confidentiality and integrity on data. If backdoors were introduced, were forced, they wouldn't be able to ensure those two key aspects to their own customers.
Thanks a lot. And as we discuss, yes, Alexandre, please.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat, and I saw a very good question from Amy, and I would like to answer because there's 2 questions, and the dilemma she mentioned is I think quite important, and one is obviously the legal framework is obviously something that is very variant, with a lot of variancy between 2 countries, 2 even region, and so on. For example, we were talking about techniques used by police and law enforcement. Indeed, if you look at police in a democratic country, which is a member state of the European Union, it might be very different for a non-democratic country outside Europe, for example. And that's really the point for the ethical framework. If you start to use, if we go above encryption, but we just go for the exploitation aspect, then indeed, I mean, exploitation, for example, for terrorist activities and so on, as defined in a democratic country makes sense. But a lot of non-democratic countries define terrorism in a different way, and any activist can get into that problem. So indeed, this one is one of the most complex things to resolve. I think we won't resolve it today in 1 hour, obviously, but it's indeed one of the points. The thing is, from my personal perspective, I would say that this is really where it needs to be worked on the legal side, citizen side, and organization side. It's to improve that aspect, to clearly define the boundaries and so on, and the tool set that law enforcement can use for democratic activities, and indeed for the social good, which is, I think, very important. Now there's these questions, which is like, what is your attitude towards enabling harm to take place with impunity in an encrypted environment? That's the long discussion, and I think it's close to philosophical questions. We can go in theory of Theodore Kaczynski, Gors, and others about the risk of technologies and so on. That's indeed one of the big problems, but we are living in technologies world. I mean, we are living in the cyberspace, and I mean, there was books from William Gibson about cyberpunk we are now in. So the thing is, what should we do there? I'm not sure, and that's the thing is, we should really drift from the technical aspect, but indeed, techniques and tools are enabling some activities, for sure. But it's not by controlling the tool that you can really control what people are doing, because if you just get rid of one technique for the terrorists, they will move to another one. So that's not really the issue. It's more like to really play on their ground and to basically perform investigations, arrest them, and have a legal framework that works. So going back to the initial question of Amy, which is I think super important, is like, if you want to define this kind of framework or legal framework to make it to make sense, it won't come at global level for sure. It's impossible to do that. But at least for some region, it makes sense. I mean, at European level, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we have some basic rules for human rights and so on. Even if some countries in Europe might drift a bit, I will not mention any country there, but it's already a good ground, I would say, for defining this. And if some countries would like to take over sovereignties and give more power to the European Parliament, for example, to give a legal framework for exploitation to, for example, convene child abuse cases, terrorist activities, and so on, I think that's I think a way to go. But again, it's not by just looking at the technology itself alone that we can solve the problem. But I think the question of Amy could be a full book or even a PhD thesis.
That's the case, but we also address this exact same topic during the preparation, so it's nice. But Amy, you bring it on the table because that was the next question. So it was, I guess, something that you would like to discuss about, Timothée.
There is one other aspect that we've quickly brushed over, which is the legal framework we've been discussing, and how let's say give a framework to the law enforcement agencies around the world to authorize them to perform cyber attacks and exploit vulnerabilities that already exist in software to conduct investigations. And then there is one key aspect that is the zero-day management. Let's take a step back. In 2017, there was this Eternal Blue leak from NSA that was a list of vulnerabilities, which are called 0 days because they weren't known by the general public and the software editors before this leak. And this was a stash of vulnerabilities that the NSA could use to conduct cyber attacks for intelligence purposes or for law enforcement purposes. And when it was leaked, it included some vulnerabilities that were used to craft ransomwares. And we know this ransomware by the name WannaCry, and which was the most violent wave of cyber attack known to the public, and that impacted gravely the economy. This is not related at all to encryption, but this is more related to how do we force the law enforcement agencies to disclose to the editors these vulnerabilities when they use them or when they know them. Because stashing them and keeping them for yourself can be dangerous. We've seen that with WannaCry. In 2017, I don't know the numbers, but the impact of WannaCry was, I think, several billion dollars of economic loss. and this is we should have a law in the Western countries to force most probably the law enforcement agencies to disclose those vulnerabilities that they know of or that they use to conduct those investigations to the software editors, a responsible disclosure that it can be fixed quite quickly before it is misused. And the police forces have, I think, this role of warning the editors.
Definitely, but it goes back to the point that Alex see and define what is the legal framework could work. And that's not, I would say that's not the responsibility of the police, if I understood well. It's more the responsibility of the politics. But on this, let's say, a complex understanding of the question, in the sense that on the one hand, and at European level, we have regulations such as the GDPR, such as EIDAS 2, that are addressing encryption. But on the other hand, we have political statements, and just 2-3 days ago, it was the Minister of the Interior of France, if I remember, who said that it was needed to have a backdoor in for the enforcement. So I don't think it meant wrong, or it just maybe a misunderstanding, or what is the explanation of this gap between political statement, European regulation, and the real need that we are discussing today? Big question.
Yeah, I know what kind of statement you are referring to, and for me, it's always the same. It's easier for politics to make an easy statement where you have an easy solution, which seems to be an easy solution, than to have a kind of balanced view on the discussion. So, for example, I would be very eager, but no, he is dead. But for example, to have the Rocard point of view on this, where it's not like black or white, and you have like something to work on. And it's not a simple solution that you turn on. And that's the problem is nowadays, for politics, it's sometimes easier to make a quick statement of one sentence to explain the problems, when it should be, for example, a complete legal process within the parliament to evaluate the different solution and so on, and to maybe provide a grant for law enforcement. So for me, such kind of statement in the media is usually done with different motives. But I would say that this is kind of things out of the blue, because it looks like an easy solution, but the world is not easy.
Yeah, you are going to you're going to strategic questions here, and I think it's very interesting, because we start to see the cultural differences between countries. Just yeah, it's my understanding that France and Belgium and Luxembourg are quite close in their own approach, but even there, the specific political context in France led to these issues of discussing cryptography and the famous algorithm. Discussion on algorithm black box that we would put in the network are definitely not something new. This has been, I would say, a snake that is being in the political debate for at least 5 years when Adobe started. However, we are taking a very European-centric point of view here, because if and that's basically what Timothée was evocating before with NotPetya and WannaCry. So allegedly, possibly, Russia and North Korea, but everybody is doing it basically, and even United States. So a backdoor is not allowed only for the country that developed it. It's everybody that knows the backdoor can use the backdoor. And that's where it starts. Well, in my opinion, to be an issue. There was this joke like 2 years ago on Twitter that ran saying, so you need a Cisco firewall to protect against Chinese backdoors, then Huawei firewall to protect against the US, then Checkpoint to protect against Russian, and then Fortinet to protect against Israelis and whatever. And at the end of the day, well, as a CISO, I can't stack just more strategic and sovereign solutions. Today, most banks are not operating in one country. So a French one would probably want to have a sovereign French solution if that exists. I'm not aware of one, but maybe it exists. But then they want to operate in China. So what do? They use Huawei, and so we start having various technical stacks everywhere that are not always interoperable. So it's just a mess. And I think it's something I hope government will start to address. We need a more robust framework on this to start, because. Well, one good example of these backdoors is just what happened with Huawei on 5G. Allegedly, some governments are saying that Huawei is providing a backdoor to the communication, to the encrypted communications to the Chinese government. I don't know if it's true or false, and wrong, and actually I don't care. I will never know. But if I'm not allowed to use some providers because of this. This is also an issue that, as a CISO, I'm concerned of.
Timothée, do you want to say something on this point?
Yeah, that's a very interesting. Sorry, I'm involuntarily. I muted myself involuntarily. Yeah, the comment you make, Gregory, is very interesting in the sense that. The sovereignty on the internet, and sovereignty is a political statement. It's not a technical statement, and we maybe should, as a company, we can't stack, like you say, technical solutions that each one has its own political sovereignty. We need to acknowledge that a cyber attack, whether it's coming from I don't know, Russia, the United States, or China, is a cyber attack, and a good and robust solution should prevent attacks. And when I say solution, it's not a firewall; it's more like a design in the whole as a whole. Should prevent any unwanted access to data, and that is really difficult in a wide in an international context. I was speaking to companies that are multinational and that are under multiple jurisdictions. For example, for storing data, and there were conflicts between jurisdiction on the duration they should keep the data. In Europe, the GDPR says that you must delete pieces of data after a certain time, certain amount of time. But if the person comes under investigation by DOJ in the United States, you must keep the data. And you have conflicts between legislation around the world, and this is a nightmare to data protection, data management. This and there's there needs to be I don't know a framework, a common framework that must emerge between countries in the world, and this is. Utopia, what I'm saying. This won't happen. This will most probably stay a nightmare.
And I would like to say that unfortunately we just have 6 minutes left, so I don't think we'll be addressed to will be able to address this point. But the thing is, when we think about a global solution, and maybe I'm naive on this point, but we saw some interest from various countries and regions in the states and in the context of the United States for the GDPR. So just as the last question, if one of you is able to answer this quickly, how are backdoors addressed, and are they addressed in GDPR?
If I may answer, there was a conference 2 years ago in Luxembourg where they discussed GDPR, and there was a representative of Europol, and she made it very clear. GDPR is to protect your data stored by corporations. GDPR is not there to protect you against governments with legitimate purpose. So if they want to have access to it, they will be able. You can't take your right of to be forgotten to a court and say, please remove my my police cases. That's not how it works. So yeah, GDPR is really nice, but Cloud Act is also nice, and that's how it works. And we will have to deal with it basically. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, and I think that's a good way to wrap up the debate. And maybe Alexandre, Timothée, you might have a last statement.
I think statement is a big word, but at least I think the debate is not finished for that. Just for me, from a perspective of more incident responder or security researcher, I would say that the situations of the attack surface nowadays is growing. It's not something that will be reducing nowadays. So introducing more vulnerabilities when we are not even able to write secure software, it's for me like a huge risk to our society. So I would say that for my perspective, or just my personal point of view, backdoors in any case, even what we call lawful interceptions, access and stuff like that, not a good idea. And I would like to conclude by incident notification that we sent yesterday. So we sent notification of some equipment that were vulnerable in Luxembourg and other countries, and the vulnerability came from a backdoor SSH access with a key introduced by the supplier. So you see that every time they do that, they introduce new vulnerabilities and so on. So for me, it's really a huge risk, and we should really avoid it.
And what you just said is interesting in the sense that it uses unbreakable crypto to introduce backdoor. And one last statement that goes in the same direction, I think, is well, we need to acknowledge that a cyber attack will always happen when designing a system, and we need to be pessimistic about the robustness of what we do, and we should not assume anything is secure when designing it. So we should always assume that something bad will happen and not hope for something good to happen.
All right, so really pessimistic last words, but I guess in cybersecurity we can hope for the best all the time. So thanks a lot to all of you. I wish I had a presentation with all the participants. Thanks to the audience, and we hope to see you very soon for another webinar. So once again, thank you, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.